tried, and I've tried even more. I've cried, and I can't recall what for. I pressed, I pushed, I've yelled, I begged in hopes of some success. But the inevitable fact is that it never will impress. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have runneth dry. I've tried to go fuck shopping, but there's no fucks left to buy. I've no more fucks to give, though more fucks I've tried to get. I'm over my fuck budget and I'm now in fucking debt. I strive to get everything done. I've played by all the rules, but I've very rarely won. I've smiled, I've charmed, I've wooed and laughed, alas to no avail. I've run round like a moron to unequivocally fail. I've no more fucks to give, my fuck fuse has just blown. I've been hunting for my fucks all day, but they've upped and fucked off home. I've no more fucks to give, my fuck rations are depleted. I've rallied my fuck army, but it's been fucking defeated. The effort has just not been worth the time or the expense. I've exhausted all my energy for minimal recompense. The distinct lack of acknowledgement has now begun to gall, and I've come to realize that I don't give a fuck at all. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have flown away. My fucks are now so fucked off they've refused to fucking stay. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have gone insane. They've come back round and passed me while they're fucking off again. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have all dissolved. I plan many projects, but my fucks won't be involved. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have all been spent. They fucked off from the building and I don't know where they went. I've no more fucks.
Welcome everyone to Fuckup Nights virtual Ask Me Anything today with special guest Mona Mousa. It's not the same. It's not what we want to be doing. We want to be sitting in a room having beers and pizza and sharing stories of failure and lessons learned. But, you know, we've been dealt these cards that we have, and so be it. So let's make the most of it.
Well, I'm super introverted. So the reason I was saying I've been wanting to come, but the idea of being around that many people I don't know always intimidated me. So, I mean, I could come now with my introverted self and feel okay.
Well, welcome. Introverts unite in their own places. So Fuckup Nights, the story is a number of individuals got together and shared a bunch of drinks. And through that from Mexico, as soon as they realized that the truth came out, they were all, you know, they were vulnerable and they were honest and they were real. And they said, you know, we learned more from shared stories of failure than we did from hero worship and aspirations. And I think it's important to do that. We're going to continue to do this as long as they're fuck up. So basically this will go on, you know, for infinity, which is interesting. We have a couple of people locally that have really embraced this. Jason Hines from Bearskin and Parr, a legal firm that specializes in IP. And if anyone understands the benefit and the negative of not fucking up, it's a law firm. So we appreciate Bearskin and Parr's contribution. And then McKelly Greco, friend and a local real estate agent who attended the first one and thought he got more out of this than anything he's ever got from before. He said, anything I can do. So if we were together right now, McKelly would have bought us beer and pizza as a group. But right now he's just assisting and amplifying the whole process. So welcome to them.
Thanks, guys.
So it's going to be it is not going to be. It's my pleasure to introduce Mona Mousa, who I would define from what I know of you as an entrepreneur, an artist, and an all-around wonderful human being.
Thanks.
We'll get there. I'm going to get to your business story, particularly about how you grew a business and then the business failure, which is really what Fuckup Nights is all about, and particularly the burnout. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people, and then how you pivoted and what you did from there. But I'd like to share how we met, if that's okay.
Oh, I love it. It's interesting.
And it's a very timely story. So I'd normally say a few weeks ago, but I think dates are important for this. So on May 24th, a mutual friend of ours connected me to say that someone associated with Fuckup Nights treated you like shit. And so to say the least, right? Yeah. And we'll get there. And it was interesting. I took a classic response, which is, what does this have to do with me? Mm-hmm. And I got defensive right away when I said, oh, whatever, I'll chat with you anyway.
Yeah.
And on the 25th of May, you called me in the morning at 9:25. I still have the text. And May 25th is an interesting day because that morning, my first response to you was, I'll talk to you, but I don't believe that it's my responsibility to speak up and do anything. And I took a very defensive position. I just didn't think it was. I didn't think it was my job or my role to chime in. Yeah. So I thought we had a great conversation. I thought
it was really good, actually.
I listened and I learned, but I still took a defensive position. Mm-hmm. Well, fuck. May 25th in the afternoon, George Floyd was murdered.
And I'm glad you used the word murdered because I do too. And
I used it because of you.
Okay.
So these are the lessons learned. He didn't die. He was murdered. Mm-hmm. And the lid blew off this thing. The no peace, no justice resonates to me now. And I realized I was so wrong. And my defensive response was to protect a brand and not get involved and not roll up my sleeves. Yeah. But I think that's by human nature. And I think that's part of the problem that we've created so far. So, and I've struggled to get over this since that day. And again, educating information is key. I don't want anyone to call in or to send in notes to say, I'm proud of you, Jeff. Bullshit. I'd rather people share things that they fucked up and they know they fucked up. Mm-hmm. So I'm declaring to you that I'm all in and I will speak up. You were directly impacted by my cowardice, my lack of decency, and my lack of integrity, and really my fear.
Oh, thank you.
So I promise that I will change. I will fuck it up. Yeah. I've asked you for clarity on things.
I'll call you on it.
Perfect. I appreciate that. I'll listen, I'll learn. I'll speak up when I see wrong. Mm-hmm. So thanks for educating me, not through anger.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be pretty easy to do, but through calm and your experiences that I'm privileged. I don't fucking know about this stuff. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. So thanks for informing me, giving me the view from the other side. And to be honest, thanks for laughing with me and appreciating. So that's...
we did laugh a lot considering like how hurtful like the situation was. We did... I laugh all the time. Like my mom, growing up, whenever we'd be in a fight and we're all angry, she'd start laughing and it just disarms everything.
Right.
So laughter helps.
So how are we doing?
So it's interesting because I swore when I left social justice that I wouldn't take up all these fights, and I can't help it. Like my identity is political, and so I've been taking up fights on Facebook with people, and it's interesting because I'll start really upset and really angry, but by the time I realize the person who's usually white is not getting it, I end up turning to just like humor, but I think they think I'm still very upset, so they're just going on. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, Karen, just have a glass of wine, breathe and do some research, you'll be okay. And I'm saying it like that, and they think I'm livid, which is just feeding into their anger more, whatever their defensiveness is. I'm okay. I mean, I've stepped back a little bit and I've let other people take charge on like educating Facebook people who are just not going to get it. And then you're seeing some really horrible things being said that you can't even imagine like a human could say, And so, I mean, I'm okay. There's ups and downs and like a lot of life changes. And so it's okay. But there are people who want to step up. Like a few of my friends were like, okay, if anyone of color is dealing with racist things or fighting with somebody who's just not getting it, tag me in and then you all can go. People are tired. People of color are tired. Black people are tired. Indigenous people are tired. Brown people are tired. But we need people to step up or we're going to be tired and burn out so quickly for work that's so important. Like I burned out hard, and it led to the failure of something really important, like the artist management agency, because I just took every fight on my back. Everything was a fight. Every little, and it gets to where everything's a fight. So everything that's not a fight feels like a fight because you're on guard all the time. You're triggered all the time, And so I stepped back from that for more than a year, and it was nice, and I felt like I gained 30 years on my life. I'm only 31. By the time I left, I feel like I was ready to retire, and that's why I joke that I'm a retired poet. People don't get what that means because it's such a loaded statement for me. I feel like I aged out of something so fast because I worked myself to the bone fighting. you know?
Yeah, so it's interesting to watch from the outside. The news has a tendency to swing forward. I don't believe that we will go back to where we were. We're not going to swing all the way back. This is a long-term play.
Yeah.
And again, listen and learn and educate. I will speak up when I need to, but just shutting my mouth and listening seems to be great. And again, you've been so good to share stories, perspectives, and call me out and educate me. Yeah. So well done. All right. So we are in this together. We are entrepreneurs. We've shit the bed. We fucked up a number of things. You're an artist. You mentioned that. Tell me a little bit about kind of the beginnings of this process before you went into the agency world. So what do you do?
So I started in 2007 in spoken word poetry. And I really wanted to do something with it. And I left Toronto to go to school in Windsor. And I went to school for a few years, but I have celiac, and we didn't know. And I just couldn't do school. I was not feeling well. It was really hard. I was in a bad mental place. I was in a bad physical health place, but I didn't know why. I just thought I wasn't good at it, or I was a failure, or I just like sucked at doing what I saw everyone else around me doing, getting up and going to classes. And so after I think I went through 4 university programs, much to my dad's like dismay. I started in advertising at Durham College, and then I went into creative advertising at St. Clair College in Windsor, and then that didn't work. And I came back and took office administration at Durham College again, and then that didn't work. And I went into graphic design at Humber College, and then that didn't work.
You're an entrepreneur.
Oh, my dad had a nightmare with me starting when it came to college. And so when I was done, I was like, that's it with university and college. I said, why don't I try giving this poetry thing a try? So I got on a bus from Windsor to Ottawa, and I went to a poetry slam, and I loved it. And it just gave me this rush. And so I kept writing, and I was maybe 6 months into being a poet, and I decided I was going to book a tour. And it was called the You Gotta Dream Big Tour. And I just booked this tour across Ontario. No idea what I'm doing, like on the Greyhound, like no clue. But I continued with poetry, and then over the 12 years of being in it, I did tour all across North America, done multiple like 90-day US tours, and toured the Canadian circuit a bunch, and became, I think, a known name in Canadian spoken word. And as spoken word was changing, and I saw the newer poets coming in with new politics and new ways of going against the grain, it really combated with a lot of ways myself and maybe some older poets were like building community. We had been doing this for so long, and all of a sudden there's all this new stuff. And I don't speak for everybody. I just felt there's this massive shift happening. And you really started to see lateral violence happening in the spoken word community. A lot of sexual abuse from older poets to younger. And people are probably like, poetry, what? I avoided telling people I was a poet for so long because to explain, 1, I have a career in this, and 2, that the community, so insular, has such like deep roots in so much like really crappy stuff. And so I just started seeing all this stuff changing. And then in Winnipeg, when I was there, one of the leaders of the spoken word scene was an alleged sexual abuser. And so I wanted no part of it, and I was directly harmed in multiple ways. And so I started a poetry slam that was secondary called Central Slam. And it was rooted in pillars of community education, safety, and community work. That lasted for about a year, and I was getting ready to leave Winnipeg. And so I said, okay, put that aside. I couldn't put much more into it. We brought some big names into town, like Andrea Gibson, who's one of the biggest names in spoken word, incredible queer poet. They came and featured, and I was like, okay, this has run its course. I didn't feel like there was more I could do from there. The business partner I had in it turned out to be like a narcissistic liar and thief, and so I couldn't run it on my own. And so I decided it was easier to lay it to rest than to find a new business partner and try to go at it alone. So I stayed in Winnipeg a little bit longer because the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word was coming there. And that just turned into a shit show on a national level because the guy who ran the other slam was the festival director. He sort of like Donald Trumped his way into being the festival director. He just took it over and was like, I'm not leaving. Essentially, this is the same thing. And I was like, screw this. And so I had started working on a plan on an artist management agency. My best friend in Winnipeg is the professional development manager for Manitoba Music. And so I just took notes of what she was doing, took notes from my own managers and touring agents and things like that. I was like, okay, I'm going to start this agency. And when I saw how people of color were being treated, and I saw the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, and realized I have to speak up more using my identity in this way on a larger scale, I decided to start this agency for poets of color and LGBT people. So started it, brought on, my manager always told me, and I saw it come true. If it's not true for other managers, that's fine. If somebody comes to you wanting to be on your agency, question it. They might not be ready, or question their agenda. If you scout somebody out, you have the chance to really research them before you approach them, really see their politics, really see who they are. So I didn't take her advice. And this one poet, a white queer poet, wanted to join the agency. And we were friends at the time. And so, of course, I was like, yeah, totally, because you're my friend. I did not have the wherewithal to be like, okay, you're my friend, but are you ready for management? You know, and looking at their resume, if I looked at it objectively, they were only in poetry for like a short while, seriously doing poetry, versus one of my other artists who we were putting in an ATB, so Alberta, it's like a credit union, in commercials for ATB, you know, that different parallel. So I brought this person on being like, sure, you're my friend, naive, doing whatever, not saying no to friends. And it just turned into a nightmare. It turned into the nightmare to the point where the structure of the agency, I never took commission on things less than $500, checks less than $500.
Right.
I saw it as my responsibility to make sure that if I was taking money as a commission, I needed to make sure that the check I was getting you after commission was at least half of your rent, especially for people of color and LGBT folks who have a hard time with housing, have a hard time with stable income, that kind of thing. And so there's a $500 buy-in fee to join the agency to cover the work I do. Press kits, tour coordination, hours and hours and hours of work. And so when this artist and I parted ways, I had to say, hey, you know, just so you can feel like you've left with some sort of tangible product of our relationship, because all the work does happen behind the scenes, I will give you whatever it is you want as a credit. That was another mess up. I should not feel guilty for having to part ways or feel like I have to do extra work because of my own guilt on making sure that this person feels okay with the breakup. You did not do your part in the agreement.
Right.
I don't have to pay you out $500.
So I have a question. I think I shared this story. Art and business I don't have to say anymore. I'd like to get your response, but it's a tough collision sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to you once I mentored an artist from a business perspective, and I called one morning and I said, "How are you today?" And she goes, "Not so good. I sent my kids to school without food again. I'm 3 months behind on my rent." And I said, "Why don't you sell some fucking art?" And I said, "What's your motivation?" And she goes, "Well, I'd like some food in my fridge." I said, "Well, I have a full fridge." She goes, "But you have no soul." Because the business.
I hate it. What did I tell you? I was like, starving is not a choice, but success can be, considering life circumstance. But I hate that. I hate the starving artist mentality. I hate it so much. People watching, if anyone here is watching who I've sent them a link from the poetry community or the arts community, I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to apologize to you right now so I don't get flack after this. But I hate it. And like, that's what, like, exactly what this artist is like, no, like, if you're not doing the business, which this person wasn't, then I can't help you, because you're never going to be successful if you can't think of your art as a business. You might be successful for a short time. You might trend as an artist because your work is relevant, but sustainably, you need to have a business plan. And I say that to so many artists, and I was teaching workshops called The Business of Spoken Word and what it looks like to be a business as a spoken word artist, even to the point where organizers in the Canadian community were telling me poets should not have managers, and that what I was doing was morally wrong, like being an artist representative.
Like you were taking from them?
Yeah, without even knowing the structure. And that wasn't even like, without even knowing the structure, you know? I think the majority of paychecks we got out of the agency for artists were more than $1,000 per artist.
Right.
You know, and because I burnt out, the agency died out very quickly. It lasted from November till, I think, about a year and a half. It should have lasted longer, but I burnt myself out fighting against everyone, against like white poets who are speaking out against why do artists have managers when they're looking at a roster of all Black poets, you know? I burnt out. I was so tired, and I was a shell of myself, and I was consistently fighting people on everything, and I burnt out. But all our paychecks were more than $1,000 because there was a business plan, not because I am this important person who pulled strings. We literally went to Fredericton to showcase in like Fredericton's scary for 5 Black people and like a Syrian poet to show up in. You know, Fredericton's terrifying. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't regret the work I did for the artists. I regret burning myself out and not maintaining the business mentality and letting myself get too personal into it.
Before we go there, you shared another story about touring in the US.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. So
again, you created a business that's based on the times and the place. There's inherent risk, and there's inherent conflict and prejudice and everything that's associated with it.
Yeah.
So now you know, Canada is not great. We've identified that. We're shitty.
Yeah.
But compare shitty to, you know, you cross the border. What was it like in the South?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we booked a tour. This was about 5 years ago now. It was right after when Trump was doing his election primaries. He did a tour of the southern U.S. states. And I swear more than almost all of the places we were going were on that tour. I was so scared. But at that point, we had contracts signed. We had everything booked. And we had places that we were going that weren't the South.
Right.
I couldn't pull out of it at this point. It was too far in. It was 90 days, almost completely committed in dates. I mean, that changed along the way. Tours changed. But it was terrifying. And I literally had, and I say this in a poem, it's a poem that I don't really share or allow to be posted on the internet because of the stuff around Trump and early on hearing the travel bans and what he was doing. And I was really worried that I did have a public image. If for some reason maybe authorities got a hold of it or something, I could put myself or my family in danger. I had this really unjustified fear that my dad, he's Egyptian and lives in Kansas. I had this really unjustified fear that I would put him in danger. And so I never really did this poem in a place where it was allowed to be recorded. So much on that tour when we were in Detroit and I was doing the poem, in my contracts it said, you're not allowed to record my performance at all. And somebody was recording. I packed up, I got off stage mid-set, packed up, took my tour mates, and we left. We walked out, got paid, and left. And so, yeah, I was in the southern states, and we're in Jackson, Mississippi, and I went to a hotel, and these 4 middle-aged men, like white men, cornered me, and they said, we're looking for the colored women trying to convert our children. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so my tour group, like, we had to protect ourselves, and we left, and we found an Airbnb that ended up being in like some like Christian woman's home with like a chicken farm in like, we actually thought we were going to die because driving up to it was like in the middle of nowhere and it was terrifying. And she turned out to be the sweetest person ever and made us breakfast the next day. But yeah, the tour of the southern US was terrifying at that time. And like being in Texas, the photographer or the blog merch girl that we brought with us and the photographer, they also do lifestyle photography and advertising brands through a project they called On the Road. And they wanted to go, a part of it was bathing suits, and they wanted to go to the side of the road in Texas where it was very deserty and do like a swimsuit shoot or whatever. And one of the women is Black and the other woman's white. I was like, do you know what kind of danger you're putting yourself in the southern US as a Black woman on the side of the road? Like, you can't do that. Like, there's research that shows like you're putting yourself in danger. And around that time, there was a lot of stuff coming out of the states that I just was not comfortable with. I was like, there was literally a primary in this area where we saw white supremacy come out in droves. And they just wouldn't listen. And it was hard because I was trying to protect these people on tour while still trying to give them the like you guys work for me. I can't tell you what to do after business hours, but you're also putting me in harm if they find out what you're doing, like what tour you're on, who I am, if they research me, if they see that I talk about like queer rights, rights for Black people, rights for people of color. Like, you're in a lot of danger if they even just Google who I am, if you meet a person who really wants to harm you based on race.
So the nature of that slam poetry and spoken word poetry is controversial at best, but intentionally, because that's what it is. You know, it's not butterflies and blue sky type poetry. So when you think back on your business, was it flawed right from the onset, was it an uphill battle in every direction? Because
No.
there are a lot of, and again,
Yeah.
we had a discussion, sorry,
Yeah, go
we had
ahead.
a discussion about how that applies to other businesses.
Mhm.
We've talked about that. So when you think back and look back on it, what was the takeaway? Was it doomed from the onset? Was it too challenging, or and vice versa? What information do you share then with other businesses
Yeah.
that are feeling this fight in every move that they make?
Yeah, it's almost like if a CEO still decided he was going to be a back-end developer at the same time as being a CEO, or she. I don't know why I'm going to say he. It's like let me correct myself. If a CEO decided she was also going to be a back-end developer and the CEO of her tech company, it can't work. And so my problem was I was still performing and I was still doing poetry, and I had yet to lay that side to rest. And so I was still so personally involved, and I was doing things like taking calls at all hours rather than having business hours. And I eventually implemented business hours, and that felt good. I don't think it was flawed from the start because there's none other like it. No other agency just for poets of color.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, a friend of mine was starting one for musicians, but I'm not in the music world. So she was the only one doing it for music, and I was the only one doing it for poetry. It was actually a really good plan. What's flawed is not having a society that's comfortable or built for accepting something like that, and a society where white artists are really offended by hearing there's so many agencies for white artists, so we're trying to give artists of color a voice and give them paychecks that they get overlooked for. The only other agency that I can say is amazing that does this, but they do public speaking, is the National Speakers Bureau.
Right.
They're incredible, and I have a few friends who work for them. They're fantastic, and their diversity is amazing. They were never pushed to be diverse. They just did it from the get-go. And so the plan wasn't flawed. My execution was flawed by still being so personally involved in poetry, being so personally involved in a few of like grievance processes that were happening.
Right.
I should have been less personal about it, and more business, like the advice I gave people always, and so.
You made a comment that everything was a fight.
Yeah.
Right. So is that the feeling let's go deeper with the burnout piece.
Yeah, please.
So you're no different than any other business. You're trying to make it work.
Yeah.
What was the explain the burnout and really where it took you?
Yeah. I felt attacked in every possible way. Left, right, and center. Anything that happened, I felt like I can apply it to my identity, and I felt attacked. And I just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and I stopped taking care of my health. Like, my health is very fragile. And so as my fight was going up, my health was going down. And it got to the point where I just couldn't get up. I was tired. I slept all day. I couldn't do anything. We went to a showcase in June. By January, like, the decline was so quick from June to January that in January we booked a show for Intersectionality Day. So intersectionality is a theory coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 about women that were in a legal battle against GM, I think it was, on how Black women or Black people were treated in the workplace, unfairly dismissed, things like that. And so intersectionality came out as a theory. You can't just look at woman as like a woman. You have to also look at class. You have to look at like Black, gender, sexuality, orientation, things like that. So now it's being taught at schools, and Western did Intersectionality Day, and our roster showcase, they hired us, we went. By that January, 6 months apart, I sat down with all my artists and I said, we have to go on a break. I am not doing well health-wise, mentally, all of that, and I have to pull back. And they were amazing. This is the difference between like the white artists I had versus the artists of color. They're like, we see you, we know, we've been keeping our eye on you, we know you're not doing well, take all of the time you need.
Right.
None of those people came back to me for like money or anything. They just said, take the time you need, we love you, we support you. And so I just stepped away completely. And yesterday was the first day I communicated with poets, and they were about an issue that's happening on a larger scale, and they're like, you just disappeared. What happened? I was like, yeah, I needed to, because I burnt myself out so badly. The only way was to disappear. I disappeared from friends I had for 12, 13 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ren Navarro is a common friend of ours.
I love Ren.
So we all love Ren. I mean, anyone who's spent some time with her understands that she's funny and she can get mad, she can flip a table, but bottom line, she keeps it professional all the time, and she educates and informs. and again, she's facing struggles and opportunities, particularly in her industry. But suddenly it appears, though, and this is pure observation from the outside. I have not talked to her about it, but it just seems like suddenly there's traction. And I wonder if it has something to do with the timing of everything right now. So if today was the day that you were kicking off an agency based on this pseudo we're with you type model, would there be an opportunity to execute the business in a different way today with a more enlightened-ish environment?
It's funny. So considering we're also in COVID and artists have all lost their gigs.
Yeah.
So say COVID didn't exist. No, COVID can't exist. I don't think we would be listening to the Black community if COVID didn't exist. We'd go on like normal. Like, we've seen Black lives being taken so many times, murdered at the hands of cops so many times, and nothing happened until now. Now people have to sit with their discomfort. They're at home all day. They have to sit with their anger. They have to sit with their discomfort. So if it happened now, it's hard to say because COVID would have messed up my agency, like industry massively, regardless.
Yeah.
But we would see things like this or commitments to bookings maybe when things open. I don't know. That's a hard thing to ask. I guess for execution of the gigs, I don't know. But people would be giving me money left, right, and center probably to support artists of color. Institutions like banks and universities, whoever's still putting out commercials, would probably be hiring my artists to do poetry. For like, I know people who did poetry for the Raptors, for the NHL, for the Leafs. So I could see ways it would work, but it would be very commercial, and it might just kill the artists feeling like everything they're doing now is corporate and commercial, because it goes against a lot of what they feel.
And this goes back to that blend of art and business, right? So there's no right answer. I'm just curious if timing would have anything to do with it.
I wonder, COVID would have screwed us over regardless, but I think it would have. I think now that people are listening, I think an artist management agency for Black artists and artists of color would definitely be taken a lot more seriously.
So the burnout, any input and advice or opportunities, words of wisdom from a young professional entrepreneur speaking to the people that are watching right now, that everyone has a dream to own their own gig and get out from working for the person and doing their own stuff. So
what did I compare it to? Dragon's Den with you on the phone? Like, I would say listen to the people around you and listen to your gut. And we're talking about Dragon's Den, how people will go in and be like, I put my whole life savings, my children's college fund, my wife's life savings on the line for this business. And there are 3 businesses in, and every single one has failed. If I listen to the people around me, as I'm sure these people have had advice from their friends and family, I think I would have stepped back a lot more and not fought everything. My cousin constantly, every time I was taking up a fight, she'd call me and be like, do you have to fight this? Or can you just be easy on yourself, you know? And just listen to yourself. Listen to the people around you. Listen to the people who work for you. Don't think because you started a company and you know what you're doing that the people who work with you don't have some sort of input. Don't silence people around you. Don't think like you know it all, because none of us know it all. None of us.
Right. And
I think that's the issue I see with a lot of people who go into businesses and then it doesn't go well, like with poets, say, where I give them advice from something I've done 10 times and failed at it 10 times, and they don't listen to me, and then they fail at it 2 or 3 times. And I get they have to fail on their own to get it, but listen, make a plan, get a mentor. If you don't have a mentor and somebody who's older and has messed up time and time and time again, if you don't have a mentor like that, if you just have a mentor that is stroking your back and telling you you're perfect, that person does not have your best interest. I got mentors. I didn't listen to them.
Not uncommon. I mean, the discussion you're having today and every fuck-up session I've ever had was the writing may be on the wall. It might have been hieroglyphic and we couldn't process and comprehend it, but someone could have. And the challenge obviously is that balance. And I think your story is no different than others in the sense that the passion overrode the logic. And most people, and whether it's a partner, whether it's talent to come on your company, without the screening process, I think it's very, very interesting. And that's one of the issues that notoriously we hear over. We just change the name of the company and change the story. And we move it through.
You know how many design companies I've had with different names? I still have all the logos. Secret, if you look at my design portfolio, the majority of the logos for a design company, they were all one company that changed names like 10 times.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Thank you. Lots of good. So now you're doing something really cool in the community. And this is what did you learn? What are you doing? Joy & Co. What is the mission, mandate, and how are you going to define success for this organization? And there's something, if you don't mind me reading it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So people will go on it, and we'll share. I'd like to share one of your slam poetry or your spoken word commentary they shared with YouTube. I think it's fantastic.
Okay.
And super powerful. We'll do that. Yeah. But when
are you gonna play it?
No, I'm not gonna play it now. But I'm gonna read what's written on Joy & Company's. Yeah. And it took me I had to read it 3 or 4 times because it is a little bit nebulous, which is fantastic. But it says, Joy & Company, we are the photographers and poets and 6-string confidants, dreamers turned business owners, and the social innovators. We're the coffee shop mavens going flower shop hopping. You and I are the heartbeat of the humanity in this region. It's undeniable that together we're the reason that joy lives here. Tell me about Joy & Co.
Okay. So when COVID started, my dad and I and my stepmom and my fiance at the time, we were planning a trip. Well, it started with my dad saying, hey, do you want to go to Egypt? I hadn't been there in like 10 years. And I was like, yeah, that would be so much fun. And we had been planning this trip forever. Like, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, something like that. I have to ask my dad how long we were planning. And then at one point he's like, hey, do you also want to go to Paris beforehand, go for a few days? And like at the time, my fiance, my dad was like, it would be nice if we brought him. And then he'll come back to KW and we'll go from Paris to Egypt because my stepmom loves Paris, loves it. I mean, I don't blame her. It's fantastic. And so it sounded great and it was an amazing plan. And I was so excited for Egypt. And like so much so I was researching, how do I fit in as like an Egyptian Canadian, making sure I fit in there from things like clothes to mannerisms. Like I just wanted to make sure, even though it is my culture, there's a lot that I'm blind to because I live in Canada. So I was so excited for this trip. My dad drove in from Kansas a few days early and COVID was a thing and we'd been watching for weeks in France, everything that was happening. It was scary and it was feeling like the trip was on the line. And the morning we're supposed to leave, my dad comes, he was staying at a hotel near my house and he's like, we have to cancel the trip because it's not clear what's happening in Egypt and I don't feel like it's safe. My health is risky. My stepmom's health is risky. My dad's, older. And so he's like, we have to cancel the trip. I was heartbroken. I was like, can we at least go to France? And he's like, okay, let's look at if we can get all the Egypt tickets refunded. It's a lot of money. We're so lucky that Lufthansa changed a flight with more than 4 hours. So everything got refunded. So we went to France, we came back and everything shut down. And everything I was reading was death counts and really sad and, sorry, hold on. It was really sad and depressing and it was triggering a lot of mental health in people I knew and it was just really hard. But there's a quote from a company called To Write Love on Our Arms that says, hope will not be canceled. And I started thinking, like, joy can't be canceled. We can still have joy and have these moments and the truth of them. And what do we do with that? And then a few days later, everyone's businesses started getting canceled and people had to lay people off. And the majority of my friends are business owners.
Right.
And I saw them all struggling and really scared and not knowing what to do because how are they going to pay rent? And I saw people who owned businesses like photography who couldn't even qualify for CERB because they've been self-employed and they don't qualify.
Right.
So all of a sudden these people don't know how they're going to make ends meet. I worked for a food magazine in Winnipeg. I've done everything. I worked for a food magazine that was transitioning from print to digital. And so I did all the digital archiving. I started as just archiving the website and it turned into an executive assistant to this woman.
Okay.
And I always knew I wanted to do that again. And it was so much fun and I loved the layout and I did publishing through Feather and Anchor. I worked briefly with Textile Magazine, which is a local magazine that profiles KW, but specifically marginalized voices. And so I always wanted to do again, but I didn't want to hustle for a readership and I didn't want to be a famous influencer. I didn't even look like influencers. So I already was like, I'm not going to get anywhere. I don't look like the blonde, preppy Tide Pod ambassador influencers that exist on Instagram.
Right.
And so when I saw this happening, I was like, I called my friend Arnold Yeskis, who owns Underground Flavor Group, which is an amazing catering company, but they're the only ones that do ticketed pop-up dinners for the public in Winnipeg, or in KW, where there's a theme to it, and you come, you buy a ticket, and you have courses and pairings. So I called him and said, what do you think about this idea? And he's like, that's amazing. I've always wanted to do a magazine. So I started calling people, and then I called Taddy and Lauren from Love You Salon, my hair salon. They loved it. And I just kept calling people, and everyone was like, yes, sign me up. I was like, okay, no one said no. And Joy & Co. actually started as the Quintessential Awards, where Alex Kinsella, who's somebody who's a part of this community, I reached out to Communitech because I needed a venue and I didn't know what to do. And right away, he's like, yep, sign us up to put you on the True North Festival. He was going to help me get a venue.
We were going to be there too.
I know, yeah. And so we were going to do the Quintessential Awards, it was Quintessential KW into Essential. So quintessentially KW. And it got canceled. When I got that notice about the True North Festival being canceled, one of the first things to get canceled.
Yes.
I didn't know what I would do. And so I was like, I'm going to take that idea, and now I'm just going to make it into a magazine that exists all year for the Waterloo region. No one said no. Everyone said they loved it. Before I knew it, we had 25 contributors from all over the region. And I'm still getting emails for contributors. I think if I keep going with contributors, I'll have about 40 contributors by the end of the next 2 months. And, I still learned along the way. I was doing 2 releases a month. That was the plan. And then I saw how much work one release was with that many contributors. And it's just too much. And so the next issue comes out 20th. There's companies that are interested in working with us. And it's just to celebrate the Waterloo region. A town like Waterloo couldn't exist without local businesses, business owners, entrepreneurs. And of course, there are the chains like, okay, maybe State and Maine. They can buy advertising because they are a chain. But I said to all of the contributors, if you are a local business, this is your advertising platform for free so that you can stay relevant, connected. And the hope is if one contributor who has an audience base knows nothing about another contributor's audience base, you've now introduced those audience bases. So you have 25 unique sets of audiences that have now met somebody new that they might want to support and follow. And if I could at least get 100 new customers for a contributor, then I've done my job in making sure that after COVID, these businesses survive. And it's not me that's going to save them, but maybe I can introduce them to new people who might know people who might know people. And I don't know, it's so important to me that businesses survive because I don't want to live in a town where it's just Walmarts and pickle barrels and things like that. I want to live in a town that I can go and get flowers from like Living Fresh or go do, a photography session with my friends and have a picnic catered by, say like Tapestry Hall, all in the same day.
Yeah.
And I know I'm supporting KW in the heart of KW.
There's a question from Emily here. Are you the editor? Are you the publisher? What's your role?
I know why you chose that question.
Is it open? Yeah, well, it's open source because it really, you can spend a lot of time focusing on other people's content. So is it more open source collaborative? So
every contributor, when we were first doing it, they're like, what's the theme? I'm like, joy and whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
I guess like I am an editor and publisher by the terms of magazines, but I don't go too deep into editing people's pieces. I think the only thing I've edited is if Joy & Co., because it's confusing. People say KW Joy & Co., and I think I'm just going to adopt that, but it was originally just Joy & Co., but I couldn't get that domain. And so I was like, okay, KW Joy & Co. And so I don't edit as much as other people would because I don't care if people make spelling and grammar mistakes because I think that's colonial and classist. And if you are hung up on a spelling mistake in an article about somebody embracing their natural hair for the first time, like one of our first pieces was Love You Salon and Spa. Lauren, she took out her hair extensions at the beginning of COVID, and she took out her eyelash extensions, and her boyfriend for the first time could run his hands through her hair, and she was like, this is a feeling I've never felt, and it shook her to the core. Her heart was really warmed by it. I'm not going to care about a spelling mistake in an article like that. You know, I don't care about spelling and grammar. It's, if you're missing the message because of that detail, you need to assess what role you play in like humans coming together as a community.
Right.
And so it's not really open source because I still need to make sure that the people coming on have ethics around diversity, and I need to know who they are and where they stand on certain things. And so I'm careful to just invite whoever, but I am going to be accepting community submissions. I just need to figure out how to word that, saying these are the values I need you to stand behind if you are going to submit to Joy & Co. I need to know that you support local businesses, that you support anti-racism initiatives. So it is and it isn't open source. I do and I don't edit. It's a free flow. It's fun. I have a full-time job still that I'm working in, luckily. So
right.
It's just fun, and the contributors are all really enjoying it. And I mean, if people want to submit, if that question is more like, how do I do this? Send us an email. It's just hello@kwjoy.co. But yeah.
So we'll connect that. There's a question here from Mark. What scares you?
Oh my God. Right now?
Yeah.
Facebook and white people.
It's
like terrified.
Go a little further.
It's just like, people start really nice, and they're really nice to the person they're talking to, and then I will go in and be like, hey, like, consider this is like a thing, and then they'll attack me. I'm also like really scared of being in forests at night, or like really open fields in the dark. I mean, like, what? So many things scare me. But then, yeah, I'm really scared for, this is what I've been saying a lot, I'm really scared if I have kids one day, they're going to marry the kids of somebody I had a racist fight with on Facebook. That's my biggest fear right now. And then I'm going to meet with this person who I had a Facebook war about like racism and like reverse racism, and I'm going to realize they're like my kids' parents-in-law, and I'm going to like hate it. That's one of my biggest fears right now.
Fascinating. Again, you come from things from a very different angle.
Yeah.
Again, this is not my world. I said this at the onset. I mean, I've been born with every right and privilege that, and I don't understand this sometimes. Yeah. So I think it's fascinating. So Joy & Co. How do you define success in that? What's it going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now? It should never. It's like the fight, justice. It should never stop. So what, how does it look in your delusions or illusions of grandeur?
Well, right now it's the only lifestyle magazine of its kind for the region.
Right.
So if I can see it when things open up and we can be in contact, if I see it with people doing things like events where we actually talk about things that are important, we don't just, maybe because I'm a Black woman running it, to me it's important to always keep the conversation going. But if I see that my contributors keep the conversation going, and they're not my contributors, I don't own them. If I see the contributors continue on conversations, if I see them reaching out to businesses and being like, hey, I want to support you. If I see people saying, hey, go to Joy & Co. I just read this article that really helped me with talking about mental health. We have a friend who's, he's the executive chef for the charcoal group at the steakhouse, and he's writing about mental health in men, and that's something that doesn't get talked about. If Joy & Co. could be a jump-off point for hard conversations and scary and like not so fun things that are addressed with joy, then we've been successful. If people in the region keep talking and keep being in community, then we've succeeded. If it fizzles out one day, it fizzles out. If it keeps going and it's a thing that grows itself, then so be it. I had so many plans, and it's that whole like, you make plans, and people say universe or God, whatever it is that you walk in your life, the universe or God laugh. I think that's the most true thing, is you can make plans but be ready for a shift. So if Joy & Co. just takes an organic path, whatever that looks like, it was successful. People came together and they loved each other and they cared about each other and they gave each other an escape from everything happening right now, while still embracing everything that's happening right now.
I like your attitude, because you're not playing the victim of COVID. You're like we all agree, fuck COVID. We're done with it.
And I could. My grandfather died of COVID, and so I could be that victim, but I'm not willing to.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you, what? Here's your few moments. How can we help? Sorry, I guess from the community standpoint, before we get to that, from the community standpoint, what do you need from us as it relates to Joy & Co. and mission, vision? Like,
Yeah.
What can we do to assist you to accomplish these goals that are absolutely mission critical and important to to building our community?
Yeah. So on the 20th, I'm going to announce this. We have a subscription tier, right? And I don't make any money off Joy & Co. I have zero interest in it. I just want it to fund itself and fund maybe the contributors. We have subscription tiers, and I'm going to be announcing on the 20th that anyone who gets the quarterly or annual subscription tier, that half of it is going to go to Black Lives Matter's relief funds. And then you get the magazine in like digital copies, and then included in that you'll get resources. And I'm going to announce it for the 20th, but I'll announce it here as we're here. There's that. Go and subscribe and know that your contributions are going to go towards education efforts and relief efforts. Join the Instagram. If you're somebody who wants to write about something interesting, I would love to hear more about the tech industry and diversity, and just not even just diversity, because Joy & Co. isn't meant to be a political magazine. It's political based in who started it, but it's just lifestyle content. So if you want to write even about the work-life balance in tech, if you or someone in Waterloo has something to say, please submit. Go to the website. Send us an email. We're launching a Life in the Region page soon. We're talking about life here. You know, even if you just want to talk about your favorite shop owners or your favorite neighbors or stories of joy. We also have the Send Joy initiative. It's postcards. They cost $6, and we I don't know why I say we. There's 500 of them, and I am going to write names of who you want to send a postcard to, and then the person's name who's sending it. It's $6. The money all goes to a charity, an organization called For Focus for Ethnic Women. And it's a charity, that organization's been around since like 83 or something like that. And they help women, new refugees, immigrants, become successful in whatever career path they want when they're here in the region. And so, yeah, there's the postcards, there's subscriptions, there's even submitting to be a contributor, following us on social media. If you know anyone who is in the media, talk about Joy & Co. I'd love to get the word out. I'm sort of just running it as like a one-woman show with the contributors. I don't want to put too much on their plates because they all are going to go back to businesses, and I want to keep them all. So yeah, just interact. Send me a message. Follow Joy & Co. I'm checking the messages like every day. But we want to meet people in the region who just care genuinely about people in the region. And another way you can help, go to your white friends right now in this time. Do some research. Learn how you can band together and talk to people of color about what's going on, and then take that and help us against Facebook trolls. Like, we're tired. We don't want to do the work anymore. I'll put some resources up on Joy & Co. But just communicate, reach out. I'm personable. I have no filter. I'm also like weird and unpredictable, and I go on these tangents. So yes, you are, in a good way. I mean, we talked about the onset. The Fuckup Nights is about truth and honesty and vulnerability, and you've shared all of those. So I made a mention that you're an entrepreneur, an artist, an all-around wonderful human being. I've enjoyed every single moment of discussion we've had, and as this comes to a close, I want to thank you for, coming into my life as a result of a circumstance that we wish never happened. I understand that is resolved as much as it can be resolved. Yeah. So, and not that we're going to sweep it under the rug, but we're going to remember what happened. And I love what you're doing for our community. And I say our, I mean our collective community. So I hope that this discussion goes on and on and on. We will use whatever audience we have to share. And we challenge everybody for the opportunity. So, and I have a challenge for Fuckup Nights.
Okay.
So often we see these things happen, time goes by, and we forget about it. It's not going to be the same. Like, you'll see some changes, but I challenge Fuckup Nights when COVID is done and you can have your full session, that one of the first sessions you have is like Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs come and talk about diversity and where we are, and like more people of color at Fuckup Nights. I mean, you have a lot and you do have great diversity, but I'd like to see more, and I'm challenging you to make it the norm.
You heard the challenge here. Yeah. And as I said, I will listen, I will learn, and I will act.
Yeah.
And that's
Ren and I are watching.
don't want Ren on the bad side, right? So far, I've been able to stay tight with Ren because we,
she speaks highly of you.
Thank you. So my commitment to you is that we will do that. And again, it's timely, and it's appropriate, and we will do our best. So, Mona Mousa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story. The business, the burnout piece is relevant. It is absolutely relevant. And COVID and work from home and stress and do I invest more money right now when I don't know my future audience? And do I need to pivot quickly, or do I just fold my tent and cry? Everyone I know has moments of it's literally, I jokingly, someone said, "How are you?" the other day. I said, "I'm 90% awesome and 10% I'm going to just go lick a doorknob and see what the fuck happens," because it's so
Everyone's
and I'm just
really scared right now. Yeah. And it breaks my heart.
Yeah, so we're doing the best we can in a time where we absolutely know nothing about what the future holds. So thanks for sharing those. But I think the fuck up is sharing that. Don't go too far down that rabbit hole. We certainly appreciate it.
Don't lose yourself.
Don't lose myself. So ourselves. So our commitment is to have you to have again. Let's have another discussion. We'll continue the dialogue. Thanks to Bearskin and Parr. Thanks to McKelly Greco. Thanks to Tyler Abella for producing this for behalf of Alex Kinsella for letting us use his microphones because our sound was shitty last time. Not shitty, but it wasn't the best. So
you can say shitty.
Yeah. We are aiming for another event 2 weeks from today, the 24th. I will share as soon as I confirm the speaker, and we'll keep this going as long as there are fuck ups. To everybody out there, keep messing up because you create content every time it happens. Be safe. Fuck COVID. And until we see each other next time, thank you.
Bye. Are we off?
I've tried, and I've tried even more. I've cried, and I can't recall what for. I've pressed, I've pushed, I've yelled, I begged in hopes of some success. But the inevitable fact is that it never will impress. I've no more fucks to give, my fucks have runneth dry. I've tried to go fuck shopping, but there's no fucks left to buy. I've no more fucks to give, though more fucks I've tried to get. I'm over my fuck budget and I'm now in fucking debt. I strive to get everything done. I've played by all the rules, but I've very rarely won. I've smiled, I've charmed, I've wooed and laughed, alas to no